Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Dr. BJ Fogg. Dr. BJ Fogg is the world's leading behavioral scientist and author based out of Stanford. He's a founder and director of the Stanford Behavior Design Lab. Fogg was the first scientist to articulate the concept of captology, or the study of how computers can be used to persuade people to change their attitude or behaviors. He started this research in 1993 and continued to spotlight the potentials and pitfalls of persuasive technology. In 2010, his research shifted away from persuasive technology into a more general study of human behavior, an approach he named behavior design, which is not the same thing as captology. Behavior design comprises a set of models for understanding how human behaviors works, as well as a set of methods he has created to help innovators create successful products. His book, Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything, is based on 20 years of research and Fogg's experience personally coaching over 40,000 people. Tiny Habits cracks the code of habit formation. Fogg guides a reader to find the small changes that can change everything in your life. In the Tiny Habits method, you don't set goals or track your behavior or even need to be super motivated. Instead, with every chapter's breakthrough discovery, you learn the powerful skills of change. Fogg's research shows that transformation happens when we feel good about our success instead of feeling bad about our failure. Whether you want to lose weight, de-stress, sleep better, or exercise more, Tiny Habits makes it easy to achieve. Dr. BJ Fogg, I so appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me. I am so excited about sharing my work with the listeners here.
It was fascinating. As I was reading your book, it is almost like each chapter I felt that I got the key to become successple, and then I read the next chapter and said, but wait, there's more. So it's almost it's kind of a layer upon layer. Yeah, exactly. It's about layer upon layer, and it's what I thoroughly enjoyed was that you dissected our way of an individual's way of thinking and how we create behaviors, and to really make it simple and streamlined so that we can become successful.
Yeah. Thank you for that. You are one of the earliest readers of the book. You got an advanced copy, and it makes me so happy to hear that's your reaction. It was so fun to write this book. I have been waiting too many years to write it, as you find out in the book, in the last chapter. And as you think in many books, the first chapter is the strongest, and then they go downhill from there. And yes, I like the first chapter, but I'm with you. I think in some ways it gets better and better. And as I was writing it, I was like, man, now I think that's the best chapter. So it was a blast to write. It really was. And I am so excited about getting these ideas into the world. So thank you so much for inviting me to talk about it.
Oh, my pleasure. And what was incredible was that it's as practical. It's one of those things that anyone can sit down and you like you outlined the importance of that you need a how-to, and this is really a how-to, and it grabs a reader by their hand and take them along so that there's no question as to when the next step should take place.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and that's what I was really trying to do. So I'm a behavior scientist. And people expect that someone who's an academic, a scientist, is going to just share theory that may not work in the real world. And that's not my career. That's not what I'm about. And certainly the book, I didn't want to be an academic book or boring. So I wanted to be interesting and fun and insightful. And, oh, man, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll tell you the next thing. There was a point in the writing process where it's like, okay, I have the references and citations. So I went, to the big editor who's overseeing the book. And I was like, okay, how do you want me to integrate these into the manuscript? And he's like, oh, no, this isn't that kind of book. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I don't know how many, over 1,000 references and citations that go along with what I'm saying. But what we didn't want was this book to seem heavily academic. So instead, I point people online where they can go and see the references and citations online. So we get that. But I think the vision for the book was, let's not overwhelm or intimidate with academic stuff or this citation or whatever. As important as that is, what's more important to me is to share how behavior really works in a practical way that everyday people can read and understand and follow through with.
Yeah, you absolutely don't feel like you need a college degree and absolutely not a doctorate in order to be able to read the book. It's very, very hands-on and for the lay person. But having said that, it is something that you can use even as an executive for your own company, a big company, to utilize these different principles to then be able to become more successful in whatever it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And what I do, so I split my time between Stanford University, where I'm a scientist and run a research lab and teach. And then on the other hand, I do work outside the university, and I've straddled both worlds for, 20 years plus. And so in working with people outside of Stanford, those are industry innovators, people trying to create products and services that will make people happier and healthier, whether that's health or financial wellness and so on. And what I like, it's tricky to live in both worlds. To have a foot in both worlds is tricky. Not many people do that. But what I like about it so much is by working with industry innovators, people that have real projects to reach real customers or members or patients, it helps focus me on the issues that really matter. And for 20 years, it's pushed me to be able to explain my research and my insights in a way that's practical. And so I really like that. And also the industry work I've done helps inform the research that I've done at Stanford. So I ask better research questions, and I approach it probably in a more practical way. So the fact that you see the potential for business and helping businesses succeed is terrific, because I do a lot of that work. In fact, I do phone calls every week. In fact, listeners want to call me and talk to me for 15 minutes. There's a way to do that on my website. And I've done this for years. I've done probably about 4,000 calls for 15 minutes. People approach me with some business issue, that involves behavior change, and then I help them think clearly about it and resolve it. In fact, one of the calls today was about a guy that was, he was selling a product online, and it really wasn't taking off. And I'm not an e-commerce expert. I think more about my work as applied to health habits and financial security and relationships and things that aren't really about selling things. But the models and methods I've created about behavior change apply to any kind of behavior. So in 5 minutes into the call, he was like, oh my gosh, I know we have 15 minutes, but you've answered my question. You've totally helped me change how I think about this. He basically said, we're done. And so that was nice to help him get clear on what he was doing. And he had a sense of it, like many people. Many people have a sense and intuition of how to either design an industry product or change their own behavior, but there's so much out there that confuses people that they get confused. There's this. And so part of what my work does and what I do in the book is help people get clear on this is how to think the right way about human behavior. And then you can, I shouldn't say this, but I will, but there's so much out there you can just forget about and ignore, because it's a confusing, muddy landscape. And if you believe everything about human behavior and all the methods that people are pushing, you will get very confused. And so part of my work in my industry training, as well as the book Tiny Habits, is to help people understand what are the things to pay attention to and what are the things they can disregard or ignore.
And that's what I loved at you. You really help to dissect a behavior or habit, and you dissect it, and by doing that, you kind of look at yourself, you evaluate every aspect, so that you can then set yourself up for success. Instead of just kind of throwing out a goal out there and saying, I want such and such, you're then kind of going through, well, yes, this is what you're wanting, but what are these other factors that you need to look at in order to be able to achieve that and be successful and create success rather than failures. So we can.
And what I've loved about this work, as I've developed it and tested it and developed it more and more over time, now what appears in the book, is it's a system. So you're not just guessing and you're not just following some platitude. And when I say a system, I don't want people to think that it's complicated. It's simple steps that I, as you saw in the book, that I outline and I build one on the other, and you can follow the system. And having a system, I'm a systematic thinker, and often I teach students who are computer scientists or technology, and they're systems kinds of people. And I just, having a system, a comprehensive system for understanding behavior and then designing for behavior change, just once you get the system, it makes everything else so much easier. And that's, the book is called Tiny Habits, but it's really about the broader system that I call behavior design. You can think of behavior design as the big umbrella term for these new models about human behavior, these new methods. And one of the methods is tiny habits. And that's one that makes it really easy to bring new habits into your life. But not just easy, it can be fun. And people succeed very quickly on tiny habits. And it's, the book maps out the system for that.
Well, if we're going to take a quick break, I'm here with Dr. BJ Fogg. You're listening to Health Made Radio. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. BJ Fogg, and we're talking about how to set yourself up for success by establishing healthy habits and behaviors that will support that. So we always heard this, baby steps. I mean, we all saw Bill Murray, doing his baby steps.
I love that movie.
It's one of my favorite all time.
So good.
Yeah. So how does baby steps versus tiny habits? I mean, they sound almost the same, but what is the difference?
I'm going to give a little backstory on this. It was about 10 years ago at Stanford University. So I would run conferences out of my research lab. We'd run conferences, invite people from the CDC or Robert Wood Johnson Foundation or from health innovators locally. And what it allowed me to do was to highlight a topic that I thought was really important, and I'd run a conference all around it. So one of the conferences was about mobile phones helping people improve their health behaviors. And this was before the iPhone. So this was long ago. I wanted to shine a spotlight on there's going to be these devices that come into our life that are much like computers, and they can do these powerful things. And yes, health innovators, we can create, the word app wasn't available yet because iPhone hadn't shipped, but we can create experiences to the phone. Well, so I did that. I did a few others. One of the conferences I did was all about baby steps. I did a conference on baby steps, and I got up first thing and said, look, thank you for coming to the conference. There's about 350 professionals. And yes, there's this movie, and yes, people make jokes about baby steps, but we need to take this seriously because these incremental changes are a very successful way to help people transform their lives. The baby steps take you to the breakthroughs. And so that conference, I think, shifted the conversation in many ways. And after that conference, there were a lot more talk about incremental change, small changes, baby steps, and so on. So it helped move the needle. And certainly my tiny habits method is a small change approach that unlocks people and helps them make transformations. And so by design, I called it tiny habits. You do things that are really simple and easy and maybe even fun. And along the way, you develop the skills of change. You see evidence you can change. So you don't have to, it's not about hyping you up. You see, wow, I can start flossing. I can start drinking more water. I can meditate in this tiny way. And then as you build that confidence you can change, you do more changes. And then some of the changes you make grow, just like a plant grows over time, and become these really solid, important habits in your life. And, where does the movie, What About Bob come in with BJ Fogg? I don't know, but I certainly love that movie. And I haven't watched it for many years. I had to watch it again in hindsight. I think I would find it very amusing.
Yeah, it's just one of those that I have to watch ever so often just to,
Yeah.
So with tiny habits, and I love that, is that people, they always want to get to the goal quickly, and they have this plan. I'm going to lose 30 pounds, or I'm going to want to make $1 million this year, or whatever it may be. But with the tiny habits, what I really loved, it was not about really achieving the goal. It was about establishing a type of behavior, a type of pattern, so that you then could feel successful in executing that behavior. And that success generated then the energy, the momentum to build upon, so that you can then more easily in the future achieve a goal.
Yeah, and it is 10 years ago, I didn't think I would be talking about this topic. But let me just give the headline. And you read the chapter on this. And this is the title of the chapter. It's Emotions Create Habits. Emotions. I wouldn't have expected that 10 years ago. But as I started coaching people in the Tiny Habits method, and I would coach hundreds of people a week, personally coach them through email, which took a lot of time. And as you add it up, it's now 45,000, maybe 50,000 people. And as I taught them the Tiny Habits method and saw how they did and helped them, one of the key insights was how important the feeling of success is as you are changing your behavior. So if you do a behavior and you feel successful, there's a variety of important things that happen. One, if you do the behavior and feel successful, that behavior will become more automatic. In other words, it will become more of a habit. So it's the emotion that you feel when you do the behavior immediately after that changes your brain and wires it in as a habit. And so that's one effect. Another effect is it builds your confidence, it builds your motivation, and so on, which we can get into later. But this emotion, and let me just go here, because this is so important. Now, to me, I think in some ways it's the most important idea from the book. This emotion that, let's say that you want to read more every day. And in the Tiny Habits method, as you know, you break it down into something really tiny. So it's not even read a chapter. It might simply be opening the book, or maybe it's reading one paragraph. And so as you do that behavior immediately after, if you can help yourself feel successful, and there's a way to do that we can talk about if you want, that feeling of success will wire in the habit into your brain, making you want to do that more. And your brain will remind you, like, it's time to read, time to open the book. And once people understand, now there's a lot of resistance to this idea. So it's going to strike some people as crazy. Some people listening to this are like, well, that's kind of crazy. Well, it's breakthrough. It's revolutionary. Yes, it's different than anything you've heard. I mean, that's the point of the book. I'm publishing things that are new and breakthrough. And this feeling, this emotion that wires in habits, number one, and it increases your confidence to do more, and it increases your motivation for the future. That emotion has never had a name before. It's not been named. And so as I was writing the book, and I had to, I worked with this concept for years, for 5-7 years as I've been coaching Tiny Habits, but I didn't have a name for that emotion. So in writing the book, I thought, you know what? I'm going to name this emotion. And I got in touch with 4 of my academic colleagues they're world's expert on emotions and human emotions. And I said, hey, am I right here? This feeling of success that we have inside when we maybe score a basket or we ace an exam or we say just the right thing in a business meeting, do we have a word for that? And the consensus was, no, we don't. There's no word. There's some approximate words for it, like pride and satisfaction and joy, but there's no specific word. And so one of the scientists, she's a big fan of naming emotions that we don't have words for. So she encouraged me to name it. And so I did some research and some talking with friends, and the name of this emotion, this feeling of success you have inside, I am naming it shine. Shine is the name for the emotion when you feel successful, when you've done something and you go, man, I did a good job. Good. That's shine. So what we're talking about here for habit formation, this is going to be new to people who haven't read my book. And this is not what people have historically believed. What the thing that creates the habit is the feeling of shine. And if you can get good at feeling shine, then you can get really good at creating habits fast. And that's one of the keys that unlocks a transformed life, is the ability to feel shine. And as you saw in the book, I explain how to do that. And that is, that's one of the concepts and insights I'm most excited about sharing. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I mean, our brains are rewarded for, it's wired for rewards. So if we can continually support ourselves and giving ourselves reward, feeling successful, feeling shine, then we are on that path where we are enjoying the direction we're going. And if we enjoy it, if we feel uplifted, we feel positive emotions, we're going to continue that path. It's whatever it may be.
Yeah, and so as you saw throughout the book, I say this probably in every chapter: you change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. And I didn't intend to put that in pretty much every chapter. But as I was outlining the book and writing the chapters, it was like, man, there are so many programs out there that set people up to fail, change programs that rely on people feeling bad, guilting themselves into things or feeling like they're lacking willpower, whatever. So I really want people to be really clear that the best way to change your life is by feeling good, not feeling bad. And shine is one of those things. Now, in academic circles, the technique I teach for shine, which has never been taught before, I developed it and I shared it with my academic friends, and they're like, wow, that's great, that's clever, that's impactful. The category for that would be called upregulating positive emotions, where a lot of research in psychology is focused is down-regulating negative emotions. So getting rid of things like guilt and shame and sorrow and depression, and how do we down-regulate those? But there's been very little work on how do you take your positive emotions and upregulate them. And in Tiny Habits, I teach you how to do that deliberately. So it's not just chance. There's a way and that's how I say you help yourself feel this positive emotion. It's a technique, and you kind of turn up the volume on that positive emotion so your brain goes, whoa, I got to remember what I just did to feel good, because I want to do that again. And so that's, I won't describe it in neuroscience terms, but that's essentially what's going on. Your brain's going, what? I just felt great. So let me take note of what I just did, and let me make sure to do that again. And the people that I've shared this with, not just the habiteers is what I call people who take tiny habits, but the people that I've thoroughly shared this concept of shine with, and the technique called celebration, which helps you feel shine, they see how it transformed their lives in some very surprising ways. In fact, one of the stories in the book that you saw and read about was a woman who was completely distraught. She had lost, I don't tell this quite in the book, but she and her husband had made millions of dollars. They thought they were set for life. They lost it all. One of their kids died early. One of the kids got admitted to a mental hospital. Her husband, this is still ongoing, he's in a long-term care facility, so he had dementia. And her whole life was unraveling. And the one thing that kept her here and not completely losing it and checking out of this life is her ability to see the positive, to feel shine. And that's what kept her going. That's what threw her the lifeline, as she describes it, when she was just drowning in sorrow and doubt and just there. And so it's really become, in some ways, again, I wouldn't have expected this 10 years ago. If my book can help people bring shine into their life and help people around them feel shine, I will feel so grateful for that opportunity to be that agent of change for that person.
Yeah, what a blessing to be able to do that. We're going to take a quick break. You're here with the Dr. BJ Fogg. We're talking about how steps that you can take to become successful in whatever area that you would like to achieve in. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. BJ Fogg. So you were talking about this lady that had pretty much lost everything. I mean, she and that's usually the worst when you have it all and then you have none. Everything is just unraveling. And I remember reading in the book there's one technique that you said that this if you can just do this one thing, then you're kind of setting yourself up in the right direction. And this was one of the techniques that she did in order to be able to get through. Can you explain that technique a little bit and how that works?
Yeah, I will. This came out of, I'll tell the technique and I can talk where it came from if that's interesting.
Yeah.
Here's how it works. It's called the Maui habit. And it's like this. As soon as you put your feet on the floor in the morning, you go to get out of bed, as soon as you put your feet on the floor, you say 7 words. It's going to be a great day. And you just say those words and you get up and you start your day. Now, even if you do not believe it's going to be a great day, there's some days, I've done this for years now, and there's some days like, is it going to be a hard day? Or, man, there's stuff I got to do today that I don't feel like I'm up to. I still say it's going to be a great day, and then I'll say somehow or something like that. But usually my mornings aren't like that. I say it's going to be a great day, and I think, yeah, it is. And it just starts your day in the right direction. It opens the possibility of hope if you're not feeling hope. And there's something about starting your day with that upward trajectory that then helps you with whatever challenge you face next. So with that upward lift, if your kid comes in crying, or if you get a call or you see an email, that emergency, you're going to respond more positively and better to that than if you had gotten out saying, oh man, it's going to be an awful day. And so that habit, in my research and sharing that with thousands of people and finding, wow, this isn't just me. And it's not just this person in the book, Linda, who has benefited from it. This is a thing that works for lots of people. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to give it a name, call it the Maui habit. And I call it that. I give them a TED Talk on this, but I might not have said this in the TED Talk. I named it that in part because one of the people who inspired it was a dear friend of mine, a woman in her 80s. And she gave me a birthday card one day, and the birthday card had a sailboat, and on the cover it said, every day is a gift. And at her age and at her kind of giving me advice, it's like, look, BJ, every day is a gift. That then led to me going, it's going to be a great day. I'm going to make the most of this day. Boom, 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 which then, and she was born in Hawaii. So that's one of the reasons I call it the Maui habit, as a tribute to her in Charlotte.
I love it.
And so that habit, just 7 words, and even if you don't believe it, or even if you don't believe it's going to be a great day, just say it and watch what happens.
Yeah, because it will trigger the release of all these different neurotransmitters, these happy neurotransmitters. And like you said, somehow it sets you up to be able to deal with that day in a much better way.
Yeah. And I'm a scientist, and I'm a skeptic, and I believe data. That's what I'm about. And so I know that some people hear this and think, oh, it's woo-woo. It's like, whatever. Well, put it to the test. Try it for yourself and see what you think. This is it's testable, and it does sound a little bit exaggerated that 7 words can make such a big difference, but I wouldn't be highlighting it in the book or suggesting it for every. There's very, very few habits, as you saw in the book, that I suggest everybody do. The book's not about here's the habits you need. It's like here's how you can create any habit you want. But one of the few habits I suggest is this one. Say it's going to be a great day as soon as you get up.
So when,
and some, I do it when my feet hit the floor. Some people do it when they first turn on the water to brush their teeth. So find where it fits in your morning routine. Say those words and see what happens.
And what I like is, I mean, here's somebody like yourself. You've consulted with obviously very, very big companies, and I mean, you're an expert in your field. And then this is the one that the one technique, the one habit that you highlighted more than anything. Mm-hmm. And that for the listeners out there, that should really say something. Of all the things that are out there, this is the one thing that you highlighted. And I would then strongly suggest to all the listeners, I mean, make an experiment, do a study on yourself. Take 30 days, do this every day, and see if it's a difference. That's the best way to try a theory is to test it.
Yep, and you're right on target. A big part of my work, I don't want to prescribe like here's the 10 habits or here's what you must do, because it's different for everybody. And so teaching people how to take their aspiration or the outcome they want and then break that down into something very specific and actionable, and then put it into practice. So I'm really about teaching you a method, a system that you can apply to anything. And the more you do it, the better you get. So as you saw early in the book, there's a lot more guidance. And then hopefully as people read chapter by chapter, they learn how to do things. And then they can take pretty much anything. Like let's say, for example, you feel like your life's getting lonelier, like fewer friends, people are working too hard, or people are just busy with their own family. So you could take the aspiration of, I want to have closer friendships, which is not a behavior. It's an aspiration. It's a hope that people have. And you can break that down into specific behaviors that you could turn into habits. And that shift, as you saw in the book, you're going from the aspiration and then translating that into a specific behavior or set of behaviors that you could then wire in as habits. And so this example isn't in the book, so I'll be making it up as I go along. But actually, I've worked on this in my own life, so I'm not totally making it up. So if you say, hey, what are specific things I could do that would lead me to having stronger friendships? One could be to send birthday cards. So every Sunday, sit down and write birthday cards to people that you care about. And you might have to do some prep on that. On my side, I'm probably going too deep on this. On my side, what I've done is I prepared these index cards, and I pass them out at family reunions and at parties with close friends. It's like, give me some information about you, your name, your birthday, your favorite color, your favorite sports team, and so on. And I put them in chronological order in a recipe box. And so on Sundays, I go to the next few cards, who has birthdays, write out the birthday guy. So that's a habit I have on Sundays. It could be a daily habit. For example, some people have this tiny habit recipe, and I think we'll get to recipes in a minute. It's after I click my seatbelt, so let's say they're commuting to work. After I click my seatbelt, I'll think of somebody in my life who really matters to me. So what they're wiring is a very simple habit, taking this moment when they're not doing anything else. They click their seatbelt, they're pulling out of the driveway or what have you, and they can think about somebody who matters to them in their life, which may lead to a phone call, it may lead to an email, it may lead to some sort of dinner invitation. So it's a really simple behavior that you can make a habit that can have bigger impact. And that's really what you're shooting for with Tiny Habits. What's the simplest habit I can create that then will grow and blossom and have a bigger impact in my life.
And like you're mentioning in the book is that, people tend to, you call it the motivation monkey, where people, they dream big, think big, and it's, go big or go home kind of mentality. But what you're really about is that, you take a habit, like you mentioned, habits that somebody was having an issue with, like flossing teeth, and then you just bring that down, you downscale it, rather, you make it easier. So you have the one habit that seemingly seems easy, I should just floss my teeth. But you downscale it to make it even easier, so that there's really no reason to not just floss one tooth.
Exactly. You just make it so simple that even if you're sick or in a hurry, or there's no reason not to do it. And there's a few reasons that's really important in the Tiny Habits method. One of them is that our motivation goes up and down over time. We really don't have a lot of, it's human nature. Our motivations will shift over time. So in the moment that you're deciding, I'm going to eat differently, or I'm going to exercise every day, or I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes, in those moments, your motivation is high. And when motivation is high, you can do hard things. So in that moment, you can meditate for 30 minutes. But what humans seem to be not good at is anticipating that your motivation is going to drop, that it's going to go up and down over time. So if in that state of high motivation, that I call motivation wave, if you say, I'm going to meditate 30 minutes a day, or I'm going to work out an hour a day, then you're setting yourself up to fail, because there's going to be days, and they come right away, when you don't have the motivation to do the bigger behavior. So in the Tiny Habits method, you make it so tiny that you can succeed reliably. You can succeed consistently. Now, you can do more if you want. You can floss all your teeth rather than just one. Instead of taking 3 breaths of meditation, you could meditate for 30 minutes. That's just fine. But the habit is the tiny version of it. It's the 1 tooth. It's the 3 breaths. And anything you do beyond that, you should view as extra credit. Like you're the overachieving student who's doing all of your teeth and not just one. So you're setting yourself up to feel successful and an overachiever when you want to. But then the next day, when you're busy or tired or just not wanting, you can just floss 1 tooth and still say victory. Good for me. That's the benchmark. It's not 30 minutes. It's 3 breaths. It's not all my teeth. It's just 1 tooth. And in some ways, the way to think about it is all you have to do is keep the habit alive, and you keep the habit alive by just doing the tiniest version of it.
So it's completely opposite for shoot for the moon, and you'll kind of end up somewhere in the middle. You're saying that shoot for something that is extremely achievable, even when your motivation is low, when you're exhausted, you don't have time, you're stressed. When your motivation is at its lowest, you're still able to achieve, to then be able to get that emotion of shine, to get the emotion of reward and feeling good.
Yeah, exactly. And one way to think about this, and I wanted to make the whole book about this, to be honest, but my editors were like, no, the whole book can't be about this. But one way to think about creating habits in your life, it's like planting seeds. It's like growing a garden. And this analogy, and it's in the book, it's just not as much as I wanted. I wanted to put a lot more in there about this, because this analogy is very accurate. The best way to grow a garden is to find a good seed and plant it in a spot where it's likely to get nourished. And that's like the Tiny Habits method. Find a very tiny behavior that you want in your life and put it in a spot in your daily routine where it can be nourished, where it can take root, taking roots like automaticity, and where it can grow. And then if you nourish it, and part of that is that feeling of success, it will naturally take root and it will grow bigger naturally. So if you're flossing 1 tooth reliably and feeling good about it, guess what? eventually you're going to be flossing all your teeth. If you're meditating for 3 breaths and feeling good about it and successful, that's going to grow bigger. So what happens, and you don't force it to grow, just like you don't force like a little, I have different gardens that I have around my properties. And so I have flowers. You don't force it to grow. I don't force the tomatoes to grow. The corn's going to grow on its own schedule and be ready when it's ready. I just keep it nurtured. And that's how to think about habits in your life. You're creating this landscape of a whole bunch of different habits, like a whole bunch of different plants. There's going to be different spots for different habits. Some are going to grow to a size and just stop. Some are going to grow to keep growing. Like I have a sunflower and 3 sunflowers in my garden that are over 10 feet tall. But they're not going to grow to be 15 or 20 feet. And if people listening to this have experience in gardening or growing things, just take what you know about plants and gardening and apply that to habits. And think of a habit as a little seed. Tiny habits is like this little seed you're planting. You keep it nurtured and it grows. And it becomes this thing that's hard to imagine when it was just a tiny seed. It becomes a tomato plant that's cranking out tomatoes for you, or zucchini, or flowers.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're going to take a quick break. I'm here with Dr. BJ Fogg. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. BJ Fogg. And I think what you're talking about, the sunflower, putting the seed in the right location, and keeping that habit alive is one of the most important things. So you want to make it as easy as possible, where you need the least amount of effort to make sure that habit is nourished. Because and also you're mentioning, like you were talking about the clicking the seat belt, and then you think about somebody that you really care for in your life. I mean, you're talking about establishing that prompt, establishing that moment that this will tell me to initiate such and such behavior. So what are some keys for people to be able to establish those prompts so that they can be reminded? Because obviously, if we're not reminded about anything, then it's not going to happen.
Exactly. And so this is one of the breakthroughs in the Tiny Habits method. And I've given a TED Talk where I explain this exact breakthrough. But you're so right. If without a reminder, without something that says, do this, floss 1 tooth now, or, take 3 meditative breaths now, or open your book now, you won't do it. And don't just rely on simple memory. So in the Tiny Habits method, what I discovered was that if you find what it comes, so say you have this, let's just take flossing. It's the easiest example to start with. If you say, okay, I want to floss, so let me scale it back. So I'm just flossing 1 tooth. Fine. It's super simple, super tiny. But where does this fit naturally in my day? Where do I plant this in my daily routine? And that one comes right after you brush. For most people, after brushing is the great time to floss. So in Tiny Habits, there's this format that we call a recipe, and you write it out like this. After I brush my teeth, I will floss 1 tooth. So that's your recipe for Tiny Habits. For meditating, it might be this. And this is one that I have in my life. After I empty my spam folder, I will sit down and take 3 meditative breaths. For something like reading, for example, if you want to read more, you've got to find where that fits naturally in your day. And it's going to be different for different people. So what you're looking for is, what does this new habit come after? What does it come after naturally? Where does it naturally fit? And then you write it out as a recipe. After I brush, I will floss 1 tooth. So you look and see where it fits naturally. And if it doesn't fit naturally there, that's okay. You look for a different place. Just like there's some things I plant in my garden, and they're not doing so great in that spot, and so I'll move them to a different spot. Where does this fit? Where does this want to live? Where does this want to be? And that's what we're doing with the best way to create habits, is to say, okay, here's this new thing. I scaled it way back to be tiny. Now I have to find where to place it, where it will fit naturally and seamlessly. The seatbelt example I gave you, it fits well there because somebody's buckling up, they're doing something that's about safety and security and preservation, I guess, and they click it, and then it's like, well, let me give the actual, I won't name names, but the actual example comes from a woman who really didn't want to go to work. And when she buckled up, leaving her kids, she thought, this is why I'm going to work. I'm reminding myself of the reason I'm going on this commute and going to work and leaving kids behind and thinking about, one of my kids and why they matter to me. So habit formation, in the tiny habits method, as I explain in my book, is not a matter of willpower. If you're relying on willpower, you're not doing it in the best way. Habit formation is a matter of design. Just like decorating a room or deciding how you're going to plant a garden. You design it, and if it doesn't work, then you redesign it. You don't blame yourself or get mad that the picture doesn't look good there, or you put it as a sunflower here and it's not getting enough sun or something like that. You're just like, oh, I learned something. Reading doesn't fit in this part of my day. Let me try a different part of my day. And, for example, some people have found this to be very successful. After they sit down on the bus or the train, if they commute that way, that's the best time for them to open a book. They may have thought it was after they finished dinner, like after I finish dinner, I'll open a book and start reading. But then they find there's all these distractions or other things going on and it's just not working. So they look around, it's like, the natural fit is as soon as I sit down on the bus, that's when I pull out my book and open it up. Boom, there it is. And if you find a natural spot like that, and you can if you look around, it takes some testing. When you find the natural spot, the habit will wire in very quickly. It will just seem like you've always done it that way because it just fits so well. But don't be discouraged if the first thing you try doesn't work. I mean, that's part of the method is you try something, and if it's working, you keep going. If it doesn't, you redesign it. You try something else.
And that's what's so great, to change a mindset, to recognize that it's a design flaw, versus that it is something that, where you're projecting the guilt onto yourself, or I can't do this, I'm not good enough, why don't I have any willpower, and so forth and so on. But to recognize it has nothing to do with me as a person, is just that the design is flawed, and I need to redesign it to make it successful. It's a continual experiment. Yes.
And I'll go back to what we hinted at earlier. There are so many things out there that are setting you up to fail or setting you up to feel like you're a bad person somehow because you couldn't create this habit. Ignore those things. I mean, even today, I don't use Facebook very much. I'm very concerned about Facebook, but I do use it to see which friends are having birthdays, and then I try to wish them happy birthday, not on Facebook, but in another way. So I do have a daily habit of looking at Facebook for my relationships. And today I was going through, and somebody I knew was talking about change, and then she said, it's all up to you. You could do this if you really wanted to. And I was like, that's not helpful. That's just setting people up like the reason you haven't changed, it's your fault. It's not. It's about having the right method and having the right way to design it and then redesign it. It's not just a matter of you deciding to do it or tapping into your willpower. There are some changes that are truly hard. Meditation's a very hard habit. The way we eat is a very hard thing to change. Exercise can be difficult because of our time constraints, and so on. There are some really challenging things out there, but you can do it if you don't set yourself up with unrealistic things, and you certainly don't blame yourself. Let's say you're trying to eat differently, and things don't go as you intend one night. Let it go. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad. Just pick up the next day. Just pick it up the next day and keep going. And you'll figure it out as long as you keep trying. And certainly don't blame yourself. That's one of the key messages of the book. It's not helpful. So you celebrate. You feel good about your successes. And then when you don't succeed, you don't feel guilty or bad. You just look back at your recipe, like what you designed. After I sit down on the subway, I'll open my book. If that's not working, just go, great. That's not a good spot for it. Let's find a different spot where reading fits naturally. And it's like an experiment. It's like a exploration. It's like you're figuring it out. It's like a puzzle. And the piece may not fit here, but it'll fit somewhere else. So you just keep going. And I think it's really important to have a playful attitude as you do this, not a serious, uptight attitude. Being serious and uptight and stressed is not the best way to change. Just like a very rigid tree or plant in the wind is going to break and crack, but something that's flexible and adaptive, like a palm tree or bamboo, man, they survive hurricanes. I think that's how we ought to look at our own exploration of change, is flexibility. And yeah, there's going to be gusts and gales and storms and things that move, that push us around. But if we're flexible and if we don't get uprooted and we don't break, then we just keep going. And so there's so yes, Tiny Habits has specific steps in it. So do this, try this. But there's also a mindset that goes with it. And one of them is nobody's perfect at the start. Try stuff, see what works. And one of the things that often escapes people, and I hope it came across clearly in the book, is as you succeed in flossing one tooth or reading one sentence, you don't raise the bar on yourself. You do not say, now that I've flossed one tooth, now I've got to floss 2 teeth and 3 teeth and 5 teeth. Yes, you can do more if you want, but the habit is always the tiny version. So now in my own life, you may not want me to say this, but as I say in the book, and I finally talk about this publicly, one of the tiny habits I have is after I pee, I do 2 push-ups. So after I pee, I will do 2 push-ups. And I do this at home. I don't do it at Stanford. I don't even do it in hotel rooms anymore because that's a little sketchy if you ask me.
Yeah, but what's on the floor, yeah.
Yeah, so I get down and I do 2 push-ups, and I've been doing this for years, and you get stronger. And then I do more push-ups. I'll do 8 or 12, or sometimes I'll do 20, but I don't have to. All I have to do is 2. Now, about 4 weeks ago, I started getting shoulder pain, and I don't know what it came from, but shoulder pain. Well, I'm just doing 2 or 3 push-ups. I've scaled back, and I do not feel bad about just doing 2. Instead, I feel like, good for me. I still have the habit despite this. I mean, the pain's not there when I'm doing the push-ups, but I just worry if I push to 20, I'll be aggravating it. So I scale it back. I don't feel bad about it. In fact, I feel good about it. It's like, okay, you're still doing this habit. Good for you. You'll be able to get back to 8, 12, and 20 when this is all cleared up. But for now, you're keeping the habit alive. Good for you. So it's like a way to help yourself feel successful and not worry that I'm not doing 60 push-ups a day. I'm doing maybe 18 or something like that. Not that many, but I keep the habit alive.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's like you're mentioning, it's all about the mindset, is to kind of program your mind so that you are successful. So instead of, I tell people it never hurts to, it's never good to feel guilty when you don't do what you should do. It's kind of like kicking a wound. It's not going to heal if you keep kicking your wound. It's better, like you're mentioning, it's just to be like a scientist on an explorative journey and have that excitement of trying to figure this out. There's nothing to do, and bring out all the guilt and all those emotions there. And then every time you figure it out and every time you're succeeding, then to feel that emotion, feel that positive shine emotion, and just let that feed you and don't make it complicated.
Yeah, it ends up, the people I teach in industry and the people I've trained in Tiny Habits, and I'm hoping this is for readers of the book, they go, oh my gosh, can it really be that simple? And the answer is yes. They're like, then why has it felt so complicated this whole time? Well, because there's all this misinformation out there. And it's not just changing your own behavior. Like, yes, you can, and you can do hard things. Like, there is one of the stories, all the stories in the book are true. I found out that some people, when they write these books, they make up stories. And I, as a scientist, there's no way I was going to let anything not true be in my book. It's like, no, everything, it's all going to be true stories. We're not going to make anything up. And so there's a story about a woman who was addicted to sugar, and she broke her sugar addiction. through tiny habits. And then there's stories, true stories where people have helped others. There's a mom, a working mom, who had a daughter with learning disabilities or some learning challenges, and her daughter wasn't going to pass fourth grade. And she used tiny habits to help her daughter get a little more structure, do her homework, and feel successful. And fast forward a few years later, her daughter is now an honor student. There's a story about a dad, actually a colleague of mine who came to boot camp and learned tiny habits and applied it at home. And his adult son was still in the home in his 20s. It was one of these situations where he didn't do well in college. He didn't quite have a job. He was living at home, and he was just aggravating everybody. And really, his dad wanted to help him but didn't know how, and their relationship was terrible. And by using tiny habits and helping his son feel successful in tiny ways, it changed the relationship entirely. And it went from this contentious relationship that then affected the entire household to one where the son was cooperative and participated. And as I don't want to give away the story, but I'll give away the ending, this one anyway, where it progressed and the relationship strengthened to the point where the son actually bought his dad a birthday gift. And that to him was like this symbol of like, oh my gosh, the relationship has totally changed. And it just started in just, he helped his son do these tiny behaviors and feel successful, and that just shifted the relationship for them.
That's incredible. What a powerful story. Well, Dr. BJ Fogg, I truly appreciate you taking the time and explaining a little bit about the powerful tool that exists in your book, the Tiny Habits. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and I know I'm going to utilize it both in my personal life and also my professional life, and I want my patients and people around me. I'm sending it to my son. Yeah, he's first year in college, and he truly needs new behaviors in some areas, and he wants to. So I mean, this is such a powerful tool to help him achieve that, and I truly appreciate you creating the system. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And in some ways, I feel like I'm just a conduit. Yes, I discovered this, and I've articulated, I've written the book, but I feel like I have a responsibility to share this. And so thank you so much for bringing me onto your podcast and highlighting it and sharing it more broadly. I just think that's so important to do, and that's what it's all about, is to help people be happier and healthier. So thank you so much.
Well, it's truly my pleasure. That is it for today. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. Remember to check us out at healthmade.co.